What if the sun suddenly disappeared? Imagine a day when the bright sky suddenly turns dark, with no sun to illuminate it. What would such a sight look like? The sun, the only star in our solar system, is an essential source of life for our planet. If it were to suddenly disappear, unimaginable consequences would unfold, while the loss of the sun would not cause an immediate blackout. Its disappearance would trigger rapid and unpredictable effects. In the first few minutes, we would still see sunlight as usual. But soon after, a complete transformation would take place. Earth would drift out of its orbit, wandering aimlessly through space. Temperatures would plummet to deadly levels, and life on this planet would gradually wither away. Every living organism, every ecosystem, would face an extreme challenge that few could have ever imagined. Would Earth still exist? And if so, could life continue under such harsh conditions? In the scenario where the sun suddenly vanishes, the surprising fact is that we would not immediately notice its disappearance. The sun's light, our planet's source of illumination and energy, takes approximately 8.5 minutes to travel from the sun to Earth. This means that during that brief period, even though the sun no longer exists, we would still receive its final rays. The image of a bright and warm sky would persist for a few minutes, and we would remain unaware that life as we know it had already begun to collapse. This phenomenon can be explained by Einstein's theory of general relativity, which demonstrates that gravity, like light, travels at a finite speed rather than instantaneously. When the sun disappears, the gravitational force it exerts on the planets of the solar system would not vanish immediately but would also take about 8.5 minutes to dissipate. This means that for a brief moment, Earth and the other planets would continue orbiting the sun's former position, oblivious to the catastrophic change that had already occurred. For those 8.5 minutes, Earth would remain unaffected, continuing on its regular orbital path like a spacecraft that has lost its guiding force yet still drifts forward. However, as soon as the last sunlight reaches Earth's surface, everything would change. Earth would start to drift freely through space, no longer held in orbit by the sun's gravitational pull. This would trigger an unstoppable chain of events, unraveling everything we consider stable in the universe. One of the most terrifying consequences of the sun's disappearance is the loss of its gravitational force. Gravity, the invisible force that binds the planets together in the solar system, is what keeps them orbiting the sun. If the sun were to suddenly vanish, the immense gravitational pull it exerted would also disappear. However, as Einstein's theory predicts, we would not feel this change immediately. Since gravity moves at the speed of light, it would take approximately 8.5 minutes before the effects of the sun's disappearance reached Earth. During that time, Earth would continue orbiting as if nothing had happened. We would still go about our daily activities under what appeared to be normal daylight, unaware that the sun was already gone. But once the sun's gravitational force ceases to exist, Earth would no longer be bound to a fixed orbit. It would break free from its well-established path, a trajectory it had followed for billions of years, and begin to drift aimlessly through the cosmos, moving at a speed of approximately 18 miles per second, 29 kilometers per second. Earth would become like a lost spacecraft, floating helplessly through the vast expanse of space. The most unsettling reality is that Earth would not immediately settle into a new, stable orbit. Instead, it would continue to drift through space for thousands of years without a clear destination. Scientists estimate that after about 43.000 years, Earth might encounter another star to orbit. However, this is not guaranteed. During this long journey through the universe, Earth would face countless dangers. It could collide with other planets, be pulled into the intense gravitational fields of massive stars, or even be swallowed by a black hole. Though the precise timing and locations of these events are impossible to predict, one thing is certain: life on Earth could never survive under such conditions. Would any form of life manage to endure? Could Earth eventually find a new home in the vast universe? These are questions that push the limits of human imagination. One thing is certain: without the sun, the world as we know it would be lost forever. Each day, our planet would drift further from its former orbit, no longer receiving the sunlight and energy necessary to sustain life. Without the sun's gravitational pull to keep us in a stable orbit, Earth would become a lonely rock, wandering through the endless expanse of space without a destination. Without the intervention of another cosmic force, the planet would gradually turn into a frozen wasteland, devoid of life. One of the most immediate and noticeable changes following the sun's disappearance would be the loss of the light and energy it provides to our planet. In an instant, Earth would no longer receive the precious rays of the sun, and the consequences of this would be felt immediately, impacting everything from the surrounding environment to the energy systems we rely on. The moon, which does not emit light on its own but merely reflects the sun's rays, would instantly go dark as soon as the sun was no longer illuminating it. The familiar sight of a glowing moon in the night sky would vanish completely, leaving behind a pitch-black void. People would notice the difference within seconds as the sky became overwhelmingly dark, with stars appearing more vividly than ever. Moreover, not only the moon but also the other planets in the solar system would cease to reflect the sun's light, plunging the cosmos into an eerie, cold darkness. Another critical challenge we would face is the loss of the sun's energy, which is vital for many energy systems on Earth. Solar panels, which play a crucial role in providing clean energy to millions of homes and industries worldwide, would no longer generate electricity. The solar energy infrastructure would collapse instantly, leading to severe power shortages in regions heavily reliant on renewable energy. However, other energy sources, such as thermal, hydroelectric, and nuclear power, could continue functioning for a while. Yet, these sources would not be sustainable in the long run as life on Earth gradually became unsustainable without the sun's primary energy source. With the loss of solar energy, all biological and environmental processes on the planet would begin to collapse. Plants, which rely on sunlight for photosynthesis to generate energy, would quickly wither and die. Animals would also suffer immensely from the lack of food produced by plants. The global ecosystem would spiral into chaos, and these cascading effects would extend to human society, increasing the desperation of a world deprived of sunlight and energy. The disappearance of the sun would have devastating and rapid consequences for Earth's ecosystem. Sunlight is one of the most crucial factors in sustaining life on our planet. It enables plants to perform photosynthesis, the process of converting light into energy for survival, making the sun an essential component of the ecosystem. Without this source of light, everything would change in an extremely short period. First, small plant species would die within days since they would be unable to photosynthesize and produce the energy needed to survive. Larger trees, such as ancient oaks, might endure for longer due to their slow metabolic processes and stored energy reserves accumulated over decades. However, the absence of sunlight would gradually weaken them, and eventually, even the largest trees would wither and die. Within just a few years, the planet's vegetation would be decimated, from the tiniest plants to towering trees, causing a catastrophic disruption in the global food chain. As plants die off, the entire food chain would collapse. Herbivorous animals, which depend on plants for sustenance, would no longer have food sources. Their extinction would occur rapidly, triggering a domino effect throughout the ecosystem. Following them, carnivorous species, which rely on herbivores as their primary food source, would also face extinction as their prey became scarce. Predators would succumb to starvation, and before long, they too would vanish from the earth. However, not all organisms would suffer the same fate immediately. Scavengers, such as certain bacteria, fungi, vultures, and worms, might persist for a longer period. They would continue to survive by feeding on the remains of dead plants and animals. But even these creatures would struggle as their food sources dwindled over time. Finally, as nearly all plant and animal life becomes extinct, Earth will undergo a profound transformation. Without a rich ecosystem filled with diverse species, the planet will become a desolate and lifeless place. The only surviving organisms might be those that dwell around hydrothermal vents at the ocean floor, where geothermal energy provides the necessary conditions for life without sunlight. However, even this will only last for a relatively short time compared to the overall scale of life on Earth. Eventually, all life will wither away into eternal darkness. One of the most immediate and severe consequences of the sun's disappearance is the drastic change in global temperature. The sun not only provides light but also serves as the primary energy source for all thermodynamic processes on Earth. Once this energy source is gone, our planet will begin to experience extreme cold, and temperatures will plummet rapidly. Within a week of the sun's disappearance, the global average temperature will drop to around 0 degrees Celsius, 32 degrees Fahrenheit. Similar to the winter conditions in Earth's coldest regions. However, this is just the beginning of an astonishing cooling process. After a year, the temperature will continue to drop dramatically, reaching approximately -101 degrees Celsius, -150 degrees Fahrenheit. At this level, most organisms, even those with the highest cold tolerance, will be unable to survive. Water bodies, from rivers and lakes to the vast oceans, will freeze over, although deep-sea water may remain in liquid form due to the geothermal heat from Earth's core. This temperature drop is not a temporary phenomenon but rather a prolonged and irreversible process. Without sunlight, Earth has no external heat source to maintain its temperature. The cold will continue to intensify until it stabilizes at approximately -240 degrees Celsius, -400 degrees Fahrenheit, which is nearly as cold as outer space, an environment where no known life can persist. In these conditions, nearly all materials will freeze into solid ice, rendering life impossible. Alongside the collapse of ecosystems, ice will cover the entire surface of Earth, transforming our once vibrant planet into a frozen wasteland. Without the warmth of the sun, the atmosphere will gradually thin out, no longer able to trap heat. Clouds will cease to exist, and the sky will become permanently dark and empty. Any remaining survivors, if they exist, will face an environment devoid of energy and light, where everything becomes rigid and incapable of growth. In this world, no animal or plant life will remain, only a lifeless, frozen planet drifting aimlessly through space. One of the most significant transformations caused by the sun's disappearance will be the state of Earth's oceans. While the surface of the oceans will freeze rapidly due to the extreme global cooling, this does not mean that all marine life will be completely wiped out. The remarkable aspect of the ocean lies in a crucial factor: heat from hydrothermal vents at the ocean floor. Although the oceans will be covered by thick layers of ice, water at deeper levels will remain liquid thanks to the consistent heat from hydrothermal vents. These vents, located at the bottom of the ocean, emit thermal energy from Earth's geothermal activity, maintaining a stable temperature that prevents water from freezing entirely. The regions surrounding these hydrothermal vents will become special havens where temperatures remain relatively constant, allowing life to persist despite the planet-wide freeze. These areas will serve as the final refuges for marine organisms as the external environment becomes inhospitable. Creatures living around hydrothermal vents, such as bacteria, crustaceans, and certain deep-sea fish, will be unaffected by the disappearance of the sun. These organisms have adapted uniquely, relying not on sunlight but instead on chemical energy derived from compounds in seawater, primarily sulfur and minerals released from the vents. This process, known as chemosynthesis, enables these organisms to sustain life without solar energy. As these deep-sea creatures continue to survive, they will maintain an independent food chain, separate from the traditional marine ecosystem. A new biological community will form and thrive around the hydrothermal vents, untouched by the absence of sunlight. In fact, under these extreme conditions, ecosystems around these vents could persist for billions of years without significant change. This highlights the incredible resilience of life, the ability to adapt and endure even in the most extreme environments. However, this does not mean that life on Earth will continue indefinitely. While the organisms around hydrothermal vents may persist for a long time, the environment surrounding them will gradually become uninhabitable beyond these special areas. And when the energy sources from the hydrothermal vents are eventually depleted, Life in the deep ocean will slowly come to an end. Yet, until that time, the creatures around these vents may continue to thrive, prolonging a fragile existence in the cold, silent world of an Earth that has lost its sunlight. With the disappearance of the sun, Earth will no longer be able to sustain life as it once did. The planet will gradually become a frozen rock, drifting through the vast expanse of space. The extreme drop in temperature will cause Earth's surface to freeze completely, making survival impossible for all land and marine organisms. Biological cycles, ranging from plant growth to animal reproduction, will be permanently disrupted. Without sunlight and the energy it provides to sustain life, Earth will turn into a lifeless, frozen mass. However, not all hope is lost. Certain unique areas around hydrothermal vents at the ocean floor may still sustain life for an extended period. These vents release heat from geothermal activity, preventing deep-sea water from freezing entirely. Around these vents, a specialized ecosystem will continue to exist, relying on chemical energy rather than sunlight. The organisms in these regions will remain unaffected by the sun's disappearance. But beyond these isolated areas, Earth will become nothing more than the silent remains of a dead planet.